I have a few things to remind you about. A couple of them I put into the chat, but I think we need to make them very explicit. You guys have a lot of different perception orienting kind of abilities. And we were talking about this a minute ago, that intuition, empathy, and maybe even a couple of others. Don't forget contacts if you have contacts.
That's
Um,
on the cunning too. Oh
I
yes,
know.
that would be really fun.
And then also bearing in mind that you also have, uh, I guess the best thing to do is a variety of just minor things that you could use proactively. There's lie and sincerity, of course. There's flatter. Um, there's any number of things, but one of the most important is that you each have your abilities. For the type abilities in particular, all the type abilities are a little bit non-standard. I mean, if what's the point if you already have sword fighting in your regular abilities? What's the point of giving the specialist, you know, fights with a sword, right? That's not very helpful. So instead, you have an ability based on intelligence, which means that you can apply the weapon in a wide variety of cinematic and ridiculous ways. I mean, who realized that your sword had been so cunningly engineered that it was a perfect cross brace for climbing up that mountain, right? Who knew that, you open the pommel and there's a throwing knife in it, right? Who knew that,
Nice.
and or whatever, all the things. Who knew that it could do that? And so the weapon ability based on intelligence is effectively pulling off some nonsense with your sword that makes that shows us just how special this is. Now the other,
So
go ahead.
I did buy the sword ability with one of my
Yes, that's your
free
fighting.
focuses. Could I move that if I already have an ability, or will I use that when I'm fighting, and then the intelligence based one when I'm improvising?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
cool.
and also the critical point is that, as well, is that the weapon is very much part of your identity. Taking it away, either through a roll of some kind or through GM nastiness, as you witnessed last time, um, is nothing for your character to be too worried about. You can actually use your weapon ability to coincidentally have the damn thing, or with, even depending on the circumstances, even with the most, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot to get that thing back if you roll and succeed. So, in other words, it's pretty easy. Um, it's pretty easy for it to be closer to hands than anybody realized, or that, look, I wonder what they keep in this closet, and I wonder where my sword is. Oh, look, that sort of thing
Nice.
is possible for a character with this ability. So then there are some circumstances, obviously, but that would make it where you would need an awesome roll, which is ridiculous, right? A ridiculous result, and then you could get it. But a lot of the time, the difficulty won't be that bad. Now, um, in the case of 13, the type ability is also a little surrealistic, or can be. You could use it just as a basic role. Okay, I come to this place and I'm looking for this person, possibly with lethal intent, but that's not even required. Um, and without having much knowledge of the culture, basically, you find them. So that's one thing. That's when you are it's more realistic, right? Okay, they enter this place, they do some things in this place, and they figure out where the person is. It's also usable in a more surrealistic sense in that the person that you have designated as anybody that you want to find, um, we just simply cut to where they are, and wham, you appear. Right. So that's something your character can
Wait.
do. Mhm. It doesn't mean your
So
character literally teleported. You're just that cool at finding people.
okay, so I still have to get there somewhere in case I want to. So if we look at the situation we left last time, where both Deoxa and Saga, well, me and names, Skasak,
Mm-hmm.
were on the platform
Mm-hmm.
above me.
Mm-hmm.
I could get up there by basically thinking of them,
No, that's less of a.
or
That's I'm
how does
thinking.
that
This is
work?
more of a scene level ability.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically
Okay.
you would say, for example, I want to go where Shkazak is. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I would say, oh, well, Shkazak is off there in this particular area and he's doing this and that. And you would step out from behind a tree
Okay.
or be lurking around there
Okay.
as you
Got
see
it.
fit. It's more of a
Mm-hmm.
framing device.
Okay.
That leads us again to the question of whether we are going to begin straight off from where we left off. So it would be literally just picking up right in the same physical situation, or whether we are going to say that somehow things cooled off and there's kind of a transition and a little time lapse and people are thinking and people are deciding and people are and nothing too terrible happened to anybody because at the time there was a bit of a standoff even with Ogox having said, we are going to sacrifice this robot. And boy, aren't they proud of this holy role they get to perform. Um, but Shkazak says, no, you can't. So we could just say, all right, well, let's just cool off for a little bit, put everybody into an appropriate spot, say some time has gone by and carry on, or we can play right from that moment. Either one is fine with me.
I feel like I'd like to pick up right at that moment.
Yeah, I think so. By the way, Ron, you wrote something in the chat about me being too hard on 13
Oh, in regard to language, yes, that's
in
a good
regard
point
to
too.
language and
Right.
culture.
Well, in terms of the okay, hold on, let me look here. There are customs roles, one of which you already missed. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what for when it comes to cultures and things like that. That's what we would use. You would just simply have to roll customs and hope for the day when the dice finally favor you. But on the other hand, for languages, um, the the Vargar have enough familiarity uh, with imperial language that Shkazak speaks it quite well, and Ogox speaks it too, but Ogox hasn't bothered.
That's
Right,
the point.
right.
Nobody bothered last
Well,
time.
except for Shkazak. Shkazak
Yeah,
did. He spoke directly to you, but
exactly.
hardly anybody else did. And so we'll make it clear what language people are speaking in.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that they'll let's not assume that every single Vargar who speaks to you or speaks around you would not. If they want to include you, they'll shift. They're not all fully bilingual, but a lot of them are.
So I may want to assume if they don't shift, they don't want to.
Right. Well, yeah, that might be a little extreme, but yes. Okay. So now,
Good.
so good. I'm glad you asked to clarify that. So, Helma, did I hear your agreement that we're going to pick up where we finished last time? So we're
I'm
still at the
hoping.
okay.
I'm hoping to be able to use obey.
Ooh, I see. If we have our map in front of us, you will see that 13 is still a bit protected. In a somewhat limited space. It's not like you can go anywhere else from there, but you can't be. You were in a very good spot for a group of people, especially big people, trying to harass you. Um, Now, you had said that you had perceived Ogox as being on the platform above, and that's true. She went up there to go and make her great big announcement. However, Shkazak is on the steps that go to that level. So he is not actually standing on the platform with her. He's on the steps that go there. Am I?
The one that are to the west.
I will take a look at my picture.
Because there are basically the thing is highly symmetric.
Yes.
That's a little pile of rubble,
Mm-hmm.
which makes my corner hopefully
Right. That's what we had.
defensible
Yes, we had
and
already.
provides
Right.
weapons.
That's where you are. And so, yes, if we look at the northwest corner,
Uh-huh.
that's of the top, not the round thing, but of the top
Mm-hmm.
square. That's where Ogox is. And if we go down to the level where you are, we know where you are, and we also know that Theoxa must be in one of those squares in front of you. So roughly in the middle or close to the middle of that northwest square. So far so good, Noah, for you.
Yes.
The stairs to the west is where most of the Protestants are, who had come to help 13, and the square that you two are on is where at least the original seeing Catholics were. And then and I think that covers the situation pretty well for physicality. And I think that should probably lead us to our point of play. Shkazak has said 13 is our guest, and has been told off by Theoxa, whom he favors with kind of a, sure. And then we have Ogox, who's realized that she's talked herself into a corner. And at the moment is almost beside herself with complete, frustration. And perhaps even on the verge of losing it in front of her supporters. And I'd like to have 13. We will begin with 13 and an intuition check. Poor. Well, in that case, it is not at all clear to you what Ogox has suggested. It certainly sounded impressive and reached a certain amount of agreement among the people who were hostile toward you, so that they actually kind of relax a little and back off a bit and don't appear to be physically hostile toward you at all. But you're not quite sure of the significance of that because Shkazak is objecting now. And there seems to be a bit of a debate, and Theoxa is currently friends with probably nobody, as far as I can tell right now. But that's as far as your intuition will get you. You do not get the content of what has been suggested. And I'm interested. So roles, activity.
Yeah, I think. Oh, so maybe we can get an obey augment later. I'm gonna tell 13. 13, don't go with those Vargar. They're not your friends. And I think I'm gonna turn around and look up at Augox and say you can't do this. 13 is a guest here. You can't do this, Augox.
Which echoes precisely what Shkazak had said at the end of the last session. So therefore, Augox, masters herself, says something ritualistic to the gathered, formerly singing Vargar, which is a very polite way of saying services are closed for today. Come back later. And she she looks over at Shkazak and says, "Fine, but if I don't know where you are and they are," looking at 13, "anytime I want, then the whole arrangement is off." And Shkazak says, "Well," then bites his tongue and says, "All right, I'll leave you alone. You seem to have a lot to talk about." And then says to 13, "I can assure you, come stay with Raga. You have nothing to fear."
I'm looking at Teoxa, see if she says something about that.
Yeah, and I'm looking between Shkazak and Augox. This, yeah, I'd go with them 13, but be careful.
What's going on here?
Are you talking to Shkazak or to Theoxa?
To Teoxa.
Uh-huh.
Basically both of them, but I'm
Oh.
looking at Teoxa.
It must be a misunderstanding. I just need let me talk to Augox and we'll get it cleared up. But don't go with Augox's people. It's not safe for you right now.
I'm going to shrug and basically follow Skazak to Raga.
Excellent. The he shakes his head and he says, "So much trouble over something as straightforward as food."
Food?
Yes.